And he's a 6'4", just freak of nature. He's been compared to Calvin Johnson. Runs a 4.3 40-yard dash at 235
Mm-hmm.
pounds. I mean, just obviously we know all this, so this isn't new.
Where do you rank them as a combo? Where do you rank them individually as of right now at their peaks?
So as a combo, I'd have to say this is the top. Man, I gotta say, at the very least, a top 3 wide receiver duo in the NFL. I mean, I think some of the names or some of the combinations that you got to bring up: Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, AJ Brown, Devontae Smith, Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, Justin Jefferson, Adam Thielen. You know what I mean? Allen Robinson, Cooper Kupp. There's a lot. There's a Jamar Chase, and T. Higgins. I'm probably blanking on Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle. I'm blanking on if he went healthy and not suspended. DeAndre Hopkins and Hollywood Brown.
Yeah.
There's a whole bunch. But I think at their peaks, this is most definitely, I think, a top 2 wide receiver duo. I mean, you talk about DK Metcalf and his peak. That peak resulted in 1,300 yards. Seattle's franchise record for the most receiving yards in Seattle history, breaking Steve Largent's previous record. It resulted in a second-team All-Pro. It resulted in 83 catches for 1,303 yards and 10 touchdowns. And he did that at the age of 3? And he's a 6'4", just freak of nature. He's been compared to Calvin Johnson. Runs a 4.3 40-yard dash at 235 pounds. I mean, just obviously we know all this, so this isn't new. But as far as ceiling goes, I mean, I think as a duo, top 2. Now, individually, I think DK Metcalf does have the ceiling to be a top 5, top 3 wide receiver in the game. I mean, I know he's not Megatron, but just to even have your name mentioned in the same sentence, in the same breath as Calvin Megatron Johnson, I mean, that's you don't throw that name around lightly. You know what I mean? We've seen, I feel like, remnants of that in his game, how he's able to dominate physically, athletically. And he's just a beast. Now, and Tyler Lockett, like you talked about, bro, yeah, I think he does kind of belong on that Adam Thielen sort of tier of receivers. I mean, he's just severely, vastly underrated. Each and every single year, he's just putting up these monster seasons that people just don't really pay attention to. He's making all these clutch plays, all the toe drags that he comes up with, and just the way that he kind of excels in the scramble drill. I don't know if that's gonna be, I guess, slightly suppressed with the Drew Lock or Geno Smith in town, but he could, he catches everything. He doesn't drop the ball. And so I think as a pure wide receiver, he might be better than DK at the moment. But when you put these guys together, I mean, top 2 wide receiver duo. And Tyler Lockett, I think he could be anywhere from a top 15, top 20 receiver, and at his peak, definitely a top 10.
I would have to agree with you with Tyler Lockett, man. I think, when I'm looking at it, and I'm only saying this because of Adam Thielen's age, I think I would put Tyler Lockett over Adam Thielen as far as, if you're picking 2 of the, most underrated receivers in the NFL, like I mentioned before. Tyler Lockett is a sure bet on that back pylon every single game. And, he's not like the most physical guy, but like at the end of the day, I compare him a lot like to just reloading from a guy that you had that was very similar in Doug Baldwin, man. Like he was literally take what Doug Baldwin was good at as far as like catching the ball, become a little faster and become a little bit more stretchier, I guess is more the word. But I got to throw him in that category, man. Like he's great and he'll never get the love that he deserves. And that's unfortunate. It seems like, when we keep talking about the greatest receivers of all time, it seems like Seattle is always in this pattern of like these receivers just never get mentioned in like the greatest ever. I mean, you have Steve Largent, but really and truly, when you start matching receivers up against him, there's a bunch more receivers that everybody would pick outside of a Steve Largent of the world, even though he's a Hall of Famer, and of course he played in a different era as well. But, you don't go to Seattle just to say, oh yeah, they had great wide receivers. You're always going to look at things like the Russell Wilsons most recently, the Legion of Booms guys that came out, and of course Beast Mode and Sean Alexander. I mean, We can't forget about how great that he was back in the day as well. And even Matt Hasselbeck had his great moments of being one of the most accurate quarterbacks that, the game has ever seen at one point. Maybe for a season, but so literally, I mean, Matt Hasselbeck didn't really have anybody else to throw to as well, so people just tend to like overlook that as a thing. But I need to shout out people in the comments here on YouTube and Facebook. So we have Blue City Sports came in, Lawrence Taylor or Reggie White. Who will you pick? I've linked the video in the chat for you, my man. We went through that, but just real quick, Steezy, who you got if you had to pick one, Lawrence Taylor or Reggie White?
Ooh, boy. Oh man.
We say Reggie White.
Oh man.
Yeah.
You guys say Reggie White? Oh my gosh. This one. Wow, bro. This is a great question. I'm gonna have to go.
We consider off the field stuff too, since the Hall of Fame is considering it. So that's what gave Reggie White the edge to us. I mean, he was dominant. I think he averaged like a sack and a half a game or something like that. Like it was ridiculous.
I think, yeah, just barely by a hair, I'm gonna have to go Reggie White, just because I noticed that guys that kind of can get pressure, not just on the exterior on the edge, but in the interior. I think that tends to kind of lead to more, I feel like, dominance, and just the fact that he was able to do that consistently, not just in the on the edge, but also in the interior stuff in the run. And
I think you're either going with like the hardworking guy, or you're going with the talent guy in that question. You know what I'm saying? Because you can honestly say Lawrence Taylor is more talented, but Reggie White, exactly. Shout out to Gene from Wire to Wire Sports in the chat. He's had a lot to say. He said some better combinations that he thinks: Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, Cooper Kupp and Allen Robinson, Thielen and Jay Jetta, Evans and Godwin, and Williams and Allen, Mike Williams and Keenan Allen there, and Chase and Higgins. So he thinks that those are some better duos in the NFL as well. And I think, there's some things that you have to consider there. And I don't know what Gene's whole criteria is for that, but, sort of my criteria as well is like, who's your quarterback? And how much are you doing with that quarterback in particular? And if you had to swap quarterbacks, how would that pan out?